scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Good rich.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And we're bringing you some more appetizers. We're bringing you the UFC 289 Nunes versus Aldana reaction show. And let me just say, this card, kind of like I predicted, wasn't the most exciting or didn't have the star power that a lot of cards have. More cards that you would consider stacked have. But with my rough run of predictions lately, I personally couldn't have asked this card to go any better than it did. So I kind of turned out to be right on multiple things I'm usually wrong on. But overall, I mean, the card was decent to watch, but just nothing out of the ordinary or overly exciting really happened. Most of it was, kind of like my prediction show. This time around, at least it was predictable. So, anyways, let's get into the main card a little bit. The UFC 289 Nunes versus Aldana. It was Rogers Arena in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So let's get into that. Let's get into the first fight and bout on the main card. So anyways, can I get a menu? And the first fight on the main card was a middleweight bout between Marc-Andre Barriault versus Eric Anders. And I originally had predicted this to go to decision, whether it's unanimous or split or majority or anything like that. Just throwing it out there for all three. But I picked Marc-Andre Barriault to win this by decision, and he did. He did win it by decision. It was decision, unanimous, 30-27, 30-27, 30-27. And honestly, I was a little surprised that the judges judged his cards, gave him the scores of 30 on on all the rounds. They had him, all three judges had Marc-Andre Barriault winning all three rounds, because I didn't think the match was that lopsided, honestly, because it seemed as if they were both pretty evenly matched. It looked like that to me in my perception. And then of course, in the first round, you have probably the biggest moment in the first round was when Marc-Andre Barriault hit Eric Andres with a groin strike, and that stopped it for a little while. And then, so I was thinking, okay, maybe the first round is kind of even, maybe you give it to Marc-Andre Barriault because he looked like he was a little stronger, landing some harder strikes and things like that. But then in the second round came around, and Marc-Andre, I'm pretty sure it was the second round, Marc-Andre Barriault hit Eric Anders with another groin strike, and it was when he was throwing a knee. He was trying to throw like a flying knee or something, and when his leg came extended from the knee joint connecting to Eric Andre's body, his leg kind of just catapulted out and hit him in the groin again. And at that point, I was worried that if the ref ended up taking a point from Marc-Andre Barriault, that may end up deciding who the winner was, because I thought the fight was still relatively close, because there hadn't been any hard shots or much ground and pound by either one. But yeah, I thought that was going to be the biggest moment in the fight, was that second ground strike and the ref taking a point. But he didn't take a point, which I was a little surprised by, and that ended up leading to my first win on the card, and predicted it correctly and everything. So anyways, let's go to the second fight on the main card, and that's the featherweight bout between Dan Ige versus Nate Landwehr. And I predicted this one to be a unanimous decision too, and it was a unanimous decision, 29-28, 29-28, and 30-27. But the issue with me having picked this to be a unanimous decision, Dan Ige won, and I originally picked Nate Landwehr to win. And I think it's pretty clear if you go back and watch this fight why Dan Ige won the fight, because in the first round he got a big knockdown. Looked like he really had Nate Landwehr rocked in the first round, and then in the second round it happened again. It looked like he was almost going to get him out of there in the second round. The second time he rocked him and knocked him down. So I mean, it was clear cut that Dan Ige won this fight. There shouldn't be any arguments at all, because he had two pretty good knockdowns. Some clean strikes landed that probably would have knocked out probably some lesser fighters. So I think that was one part of the thing about Nate Landwehr. Yeah, well, no, I was going to say that I didn't think he'd ever been finished, but he has been knocked out and submitted once. But yeah, that was clear cut. I mean, I predicted it was going to go to decision, because I understood that both of these fighters, Dan Ige and Nate Landwehr, are both very, very durable and competitive, and have a lot of experience. But it just didn't go the decision route that I wanted it to go. All right, on to the welterweight bout between Mike Malott versus Dan Fugit, and I picked this originally. I picked this originally to be fight to end with Mike Malott winning by knockout TKO. But he ended up winning. He did win, but it ended up coming by submission at 1 minute and 6 seconds of the second round. And saying that it got to the second round and it was, I guess, what do you say, 1 minute and 6 seconds in. But that's the thing about this fight, is that it was very close in the first round and very close in the start of the second round. No fighter really displayed like their dominance in position, of whether it being stand up or on the ground. It was just kind of a stalemate. And then Mark Malott landed a hard shot that rocked Adam Fugit, and he jumped on that guillotine choke. He submitted him with a guillotine choke and got him in the worst possible scenario and position for that, because he had him in a guillotine choke in the full mount. So it probably felt like Adam Fugit probably felt pretty good about himself up until that point. But when he got to that point, it probably felt like his head was about to pop off. So didn't predict how the fight would go, but I did predict a finish. I predicted a finish, but by knockout or TKO instead. Seems like some of these fights and results have been flipped around a little bit. But I started out on the card 2-1 with correct picks. All right, on to the co-main event, the lightweight bout between Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush. And Charles Oliveira ended up winning this fight. He defeated Beneil Dariush with TKO punches, and that was at 4 minutes and 10 seconds of the first round. And this was the way this fight kind of started out. I thought maybe it was going to go the route I was going to predict it, that I did predict it. I predicted Charles Oliveira to win this fight by submission, adding to his UFC submission record wins. But he early on in the fight, it looked like he was basically giving up ground control to Beneil Dariush. Like he literally pulled guard on Beneil Dariush, and then Beneil Dariush didn't really have much impact with any kind of ground and pound. But Charles Oliveira, in the same way, wasn't really close to getting any of those phenomenal submissions that he's known for. So they fooled around on the ground for majority of the round, because the round ended by TKO punches at 4 minutes and 10 seconds. So probably the first 2 or 3 minutes, it was just kind of a stalemate on the ground. And then Charles Oliveira, when he wanted to, just stood up, got back up to his feet, and started unloading. It was like watching two different kind of game plans. And then he started throwing punches and landing, and it just Beneil Dariush just looked outclassed in this fight. And as the results show, it didn't last much longer once Charles Oliveira decided to start unloading and let it go, let his hands go, because I think maybe he was trying to add to the submission record, but I think he found out real quick that he probably is better on the ground or standing up, but it turned out that he was much better standing up, because he finished Beneil Dariush. He pretty much dominated him. You know, in the first part of the round, you wouldn't have really thought that, because he was pulling guard and not really coming close to any submissions. But he chose to be on his back like that. Like, he chose that position. That's what you got to understand about that. All right. So, but it was a phenomenal fight, and it was nice to see Charles Oliveira win and probably set up a rematch with Islam Makhachev. So, anyways, enough with that. So that took me to 3-1 on the card. So we're back. We're back to predicting some fights, right? Maybe you guys will have some reason to tune in to these podcasts again. At least the ones about UFC and MMA. All right, on to the main event. We have it was a women's bantamweight title bout with Amanda Nunes, the champion, versus Irene Aldana, the challenger. And that fight ended up going to decision, went 50-44, 50-44, and 50-43, and obviously it went all 5 rounds. And I was a little surprised that every single one of the judges had 10-8 at some point in the fight. Even the last judge had 2 10-8 rounds for Amanda Nunes, and so Irene Aldana only scored 8 points in 2 of the rounds, which I was surprised. It didn't seem as if she was getting dominated that much. It just seemed like Irene Aldana really wasn't doing anything to really get close to causing any damage to Amanda Nunes. She was basically just earmuffed the entire time, pretty much covering up the entire time, and letting Amanda Nunes just point strike her to death. So, you know, it was the main event for the women's bantamweight title, and it was a great fight, I guess, for Amanda Nunes to end her career on. But overall, it was, for being a main event on a pay-per-view card, it was pretty boring. It was basically like watching a sparring match between Amanda Nunes and Irene Aldana. I mean, the biggest moment of the fight honestly came after the fight, when Amanda Nunes retired. She cut off her gloves and put down both titles and retired, you know. And I had been saying that before, that I thought Amanda Nunes, you know, was kind of holding up the divisions for being a multiple champion, multiple weight champion, you know, with the bantamweights. And yeah, for the featherweights, actually, she was kind of holding up the division of the featherweights for the 145 pounders. but now she retires, and it looks as if I've seen some news reports that the UFC is just going to get rid of the women's featherweight division. So don't have to worry about her holding up the division anymore, because there isn't women's featherweight division anymore. And and I don't know if I think I forgot to say this, but I once again I picked Amanda Nunes to win this fight, but I predicted that she would cause more damage, been able to get Irene Aldana out of there. So if nothing else, I'll give Irene Aldana some respect for not getting knocked out, TKO'd, or anything like that, because she showed that if nothing else, at least she's durable. She can take a punch, but it's easier to take a punch when you're literally earmuffed the entire time. She was taking some more shots to the body and stuff than probably really any of the hard headshots. And so no more Amanda Nunes for that, but we ended up finishing the card at 4-1 on the card. So we got almost all of them right, except the Dan Ige, Nate Landwehr fight. And before I get out of here, let me see if I can remember some people. I've had a couple subscribers here and there, so before I forget to shout them out here, let me see if I can pronounce this person's name right. So yeah, I'm trying to think if I'm gonna say this person's name right when giving them a shout out. You want to give someone a shout out, but you also want to be respectful and say the right name. So like I said, I like any of the input from my fans. Anyone that subscribes, I really appreciate that. It helps with the channel. Likes, comments, all that. Any input from any of the fans, couple fans that I have, I really appreciate it. So what I want to do here is I want to shout out Uepa Io. I think that's how his name is said. I want to shout you out. I appreciate you subscribing recently. I really appreciate that. And it's kind of like Uepa Io. If you subscribe and I can identify you, I'll give you a shout out. But yeah, I'm not sure, not 100% sure if you're more of a New Orleans Saints fan or you're an MMA fan, but either way, I appreciate you subscribing. So thank you. And so let's just go over these fights one more time before I get out of here and give what I predicted versus what actually happened. So in the middleweight bout between Marc-Andre Barriault versus Eric Andres, I originally predicted this to be a unanimous decision win by Marc-Andre Barriault, and he did. So he got a decision win, 30-27, 30-27, 30-27. And only thing about that fight that surprised me is that every single judge thought that Marc-Andre Barriault won every round. All right, and then in the featherweight bout between Dan Ige versus Nate Landwehr, I predicted Nate Landwehr to win this by decision, but it actually went the other way. Dan Ige ended up winning this fight by decision, and it was a clear-cut decision, 29-28, 29-28, and 30-27. And for those refs or judges giving it a 29-28, I'm sure they gave the two rounds that they gave Dan Ige winning were the two where Dan Ige knocked Nate Landwehr down, got the two knockdowns of the fight. And then onto the welterweight bout between Mike Mollett versus Dan Bugat. I originally predicted that Mike Mollett would get the knockout in this, but he didn't get the knockout, but he still got the finish. He got a submission by guillotine choke at 1 minute and 6 seconds of the second round. So nothing out of the ordinary with that. I predicted it right, but I predicted it'd be a finish, but I didn't predict that actual outcome. By way of it wasn't by way of knockout. It was by way of choke. And then co-main event had Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush, and I had predicted it originally to be another submission win by Charles Oliveira, but he ended up winning by TKO at 4 minutes and 10 seconds of the first round, and that was just a championship performance by Charles Oliveira in a non-championship bout. But he didn't need the 5 rounds to get Beneil Dariush out of there. So basically, my predictions for the co-main event, Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush, and the welterweight bout between Mike Mollett and Dan Fu. My predictions were just flipped around. That's what we'll go with there. And then with the women's bantamweight title fight, Amanda Nunes, the champion, versus Irene Aldana, the challenger. I had Amanda Nunes finishing her with TKO or knockout, but said it just went decision, unanimous, 50-44, 50-44, 50-43, pretty much just complete dominance over Irene Aldana. I don't think she really caused a lot of damage to her or was really close to like knocking her out or getting her out of there. You could maybe argue in one of the flurries of punches between Amanda Nunes and Irene Aldana in the first round that Irene Aldana actually landed one of the hardest and cleanest punches of the fight. But clearly it wasn't enough with her only scoring eight points in multiple rounds. So, anyways, I think that's all I have for you this evening. So, up for I can't wait for the next card, UFC 290, and I'm sure there'll be more Saints content soon. So, with that, can I get a check, please?